The kind of research to be ready for the next pandemic is a tens of billions number. So it'll look almost trivial compared to the price we're paying now. And that price would have been a lot lower if the world was more prepared. We successfully avoided having another world war. It's a phenomenal thing. We haven't, blown off a nuclear weapon as part of a conflict. We did that by binding ourselves together through a variety of institutions, including WHO on health.
Churchill, Roosevelt, and Stalin dedicated their nations to the foundations for permanent peace through a United Nations organization.
Here,
I felt like I was working in a war zone. They all have COVID.
This is a tragic event. Whatever good comes out of this will in no way make up for the problems that it causes. It should say to us, okay, this science is important. Let's use it to avoid pandemics and for other things.
In 1918, there was the Great Spanish Influenza Flu, which had all the same things happening as now. They made people wear masks, they made people do stuff. And as Bill Gates just said, they're going to learn the lessons from Corona, and Fauci has claimed that we're entering a new age of pandemics, and each time it's going to step more forward towards the New World Order. And they compare on the CDC website to 1918 and say what lessons they should have learnt for a future pandemic. And they put this on their website in 2018, 2 years before coronavirus. But how they're responding this time to Corona is based off supposed lessons learned from the Spanish flu. And there are a lot of comparisons, and we're going to go through them all. So just like now, the 1918 so-called flu pandemic had anti-mask leagues. San Francisco. Sanitary spartans broke out in San Francisco in protest of the influenza mask-wearing ordinance. A league was organised last night, which is to be known as the Anti-Mask League. Its members declared the masks insanitary and useless. So, there was anti-mask protesters in 1918. Closing of all public places is state order. Rapid spread of Spanish influenza leads to a move by the health secretary. Schools are dismissed. Churches, lodges, theatres and other places also come under the ban, just like Corona. Public meetings are forbidden. Sweeping order issued by a health board to prevent the influenza epidemic. Warning against visiting. More than 130 new cases reported as developing over Sunday. 4 deaths. Again, it's exactly the same outcomes as Corona. But the difference is, at the end of this, they're not going to push a vaccine.
At the onset of COVID-19, beaches were closed, so was Disneyland. Similar actions were taken back then, too.
Concerts, big gatherings, parades, processions, and controversially, they closed churches.
And many cities ordered people to wear masks. The rules about wearing them even more stringent back then.
And they gave out hundreds, thousands of tickets from people unwilling to wear a mask.
But
this is what they had back in 1918. Keep feet and clothing dry, avoid crowds, protect your nose and mouth in the presence of sneezers, because the way that the police clamped down on people that didn't want to wear masks, they called them sneezers. That was the slang term, much like Karen is becoming a derogatory term. Now, they called them sneezers back then. Gargle your throat 3 times a day with a mild antiseptic, if only salt and water. Don't neglect a cold. Keep as much as possible in the sunshine. Well, here, they're taking away your sunshine, because they want to damage your immune system by not getting vitamins outside, because then the vaccine will damage your immune system. And also, don't get scared was also put in a newspaper in the 1918 influenza flu pandemic. So it was like, we're testing for Corona, don't worry about it. And they also had the mask shortages, the reported mask shortages. We need the Red Cross workers to make more flu masks. That happened again during Corona. These are newspaper clippings. And the flu cops are given orders. Commissioner of Public Health and Safety this morning issued orders to 300 War Service Special Police to cooperate with the regular officers enforcing the wearing of flu masks by all citizens of Oakland. This corps of Special Police, which is composed of both men and women in about equal proportion, will be instructed as to their particular duties in orders issued. They will not make arrests, but they will secure the names and addresses of all persons whom they find violating the order to wear masks and report the same to police headquarters. If the person reported persists in refusing to comply with the flu mask rule, the regular authorities will deal with them in accordance with the new city ordinance on the subject, which provides for a fine of not less than $5 and not more than $100 for 10 days in jail for both a fine and a jail sentence. So this was in 1918, and it's funny that the CDC put it on their website and say the lessons that we should have learned from this are now applying to Corona, and Bill Gates is saying we need to learn lessons from Corona for the next pandemic. But this is what happened at the end of it. Flu is gone, masks off, outside of lower distance. There was no vaccine at the end of the flu outbreak in 1918, but it seems like this was a massive pilot for what we're seeing now. Say, you young fellow, get a mask or go to jail. So they had the police out with the masks on, targeting people who weren't wearing them. They had propaganda pictures like these where they showed people on makeshift stretchers and the health professionals were the heroes. I like that the health professional there isn't wearing a mask, but the one on the right and the one on the left is.
And the war is over. Into Market Street for the men and women of the city to celebrate. Up and down the street they parade, delirious with joy. For some of them have come to know the meaning of war. Grotesque and ugly in their influenza masks, the people of San Francisco celebrate. You've seen the signs they carry. Kaiser Wilhelm is Sweet William now. Who is afraid of the Huns? Some of them signs of hate, most of them just outpourings of a great joy. For this day, November 11th, 1918, marks the end of an era of hate and bloodshed and violence. It's the beginning of peace and goodwill on earth. And those who have died have not died in vain. They've died to make the world safe for democracy. They've swept to victory in the war to end war. And so San Francisco celebrates in 1918 because the war is over and there'll never be another.
And they even had police shooting people. 3 shot in struggle with mask slacker. 2 men and a woman were shot at Powell and Mercer Streets. He discharges a revolver in a battle with James Weiser, a blacksmith who refused to don a gay's influenza mask at the order of the health officer. So now this is the Black Lives Matter tactic where they're saying black people are getting shot by the police. You see? It's the same tactics, it's the same propaganda. And they had their protests back in 1918. Anti-mask meeting tonight, January 25th, Dreamland Rink, to protest against the unhealthy mask ordinance. Extracts will be read from State Board of Health Bulletin showing compulsory mask wearing to be a failure. That's what we have now. We have the CDC themselves on the website have published that wearing masks does not help, and the Wall Street Journal has published that wearing masks do not help. Eugene E. Schmitz and other interesting speakers. Admission is free. Flu masks ready to check the epidemic. This is a newspaper clipping again. The nurses with their face masks on. Wear a mask and save your life, 1918, from the Red Cross in America. The Red Cross has come to the assistance of the Board of Health. Doctors and nurses cannot be obtained to take care of the affected. You must wear a mask, not only protect yourself but your children and your neighbours from influenza, pneumonia and death. A gauge mask is 99% proof against influenza. Doctors wear them. Those who do not wear them will get sick. The man, woman or child who will not wear a mask is now a dangerous slacker. Dum dum dum. Wear masks. Going to work, going home and at home. So they had the big propaganda drive in the 1918 influenza drive where they were testing it. And they had people out wearing face coverings in 1918. again refuses to don an influenza mask, shot by officer. That was in San Francisco, October the 28th, 1918. So is this where we're going to go? Are we going to see people actively get shot by officers? Because we're already seeing house raids by officers in Australia. October the 24th, an ordinance compelling the wearing of masks by every person in San Francisco as a means of preventing the spread of influenza. All theatres are closed until further notice at the request of the then mayor. And in the UK, the owners of theatres apparently came out and protested, "Theatres should be open!" I mean, I know they say history repeats itself, but it really does. If we go back to the CDC website, they say we should learn lessons for future pandemics from the 1918 flu pandemic, even though it's probably just the same hoax. So these people at the CDC and these people at the UN genuinely believe that they are doing good, when actually they're piloting the New World Order. And the cult stems past lifetimes. The cult activities and the cult research goes past lifetimes, but as we just saw from those pictures, it says here, ultimately the study its secrets to better prepare for future pandemics. And the future pandemic, this is from 2018 on the CDC's website. 2 years later, we got coronavirus. And, at the same time, Bill Gates is saying we should be learning lessons from coronavirus. And Dr. Fauci is saying that we're entering a new era of non-stop pandemics. And they parade this around in the media. They showed the police from 1918 with the face masks on. Mask resistance during a pandemic isn't new. In 1918, many Americans were slackers. And this is obviously propaganda against the slackers. But if you look here, non-essential crowds barred in epidemic war at the top right. Churches and salons were exempt then, they're not now. Conventions, athletics and parties hit. So you see, in 1918, the churches weren't closed down, they were exempt, and the hair salons were exempt. So this time, the churches and the hair salons are attacked vigorously. They've made sure to amend that part. Health order dooms lodge hall cobwebs. A ban on all meetings until places are renovated. 21 theatres open. So just like we're seeing here with the cinemas reopening, when they put in their measures, you can go there.
We had to make sure that our consumers knew that when they came to the cinema, it would be a safe experience. And so we've worked for over 2 months now with leading epidemiologists to put together a standard set of base protocols that we announced this past Friday, so that movie fans know that no matter which cinema they go to in the country, they're gonna have a safe experience, right? And third, it's the opening up of the markets consistent with health and safety guidelines. We've been working with all the states, all the health departments, showing them our protocols and then demonstrating to them that we can open up safely.
Open-faced sneezers to be arrested. Curfews were brought in. Full curfew to sound for cities Saturday night. Persons not on business expected to quit the streets at 9 o'clock. Draft men to be first inoculated for flu. Those were the headlines in the Chicago newspapers in 1918 and 1919. Headlines include police raid salons in war on influenza. Sound familiar? So each time it seems that they adjust the rules and tighten down a bit more. So now the churches were attacked vigorously, they were burnt down during Black Lives Matter protests, but they were also shut down and told not to reopen at all, and the police went arresting people in the churches, saying they were breaking coronavirus restrictions, even though they were doing a drive-through church and staying socially distant. To prevent influenza, do not take any person's breath, keep the mouth and teeth clean, avoid those that cough and sneeze, do not visit poorly ventilated places, keep warm, get fresh air and sunshine. So this time that changes to, Don't keep warm, don't get fresh air and sunshine, lock yourself down because we're attacking your immune system. Right? Don't use common drinking cups, towels, etc. Cover your mouth when you cough and sneeze, that turns into sneezing into your elbow. Avoid worry, fear and fatigue. Well, they're making us very fearful and very fatigued in the mainstream media with the hoax and the false numbers and everything else. Stay at home if you have a cold. That turns into stay at home if you have symptoms of corona, which is basically a cold and the flu. Walk to your work or office. In sick rooms, wear a mask like in the illustration. So, you have to say, how many things does this have in common with where we're going through right now? And Bill Gates is already saying we've not done enough to tackle corona, we need to learn lessons, while Dr. Fauci says there will be more pandemics in the future. Which means that they're going to usher in more of the New World Order now. It's my belief that they trialed it in 1918, and they're now parading it around in the media like, oh look, we did the first trial of people complying in 1918, now we're adding a bit more, and it's my belief that in each pandemic, or each plandemic, we will see more and more of this. And movies like Contagion in 2012 depict the virus outbreak and the World Health Organization reacting to it, and the tagline to the movie is "Nothing spreads like fear."
It was a groundbreaking ceremony for a new factory.
Did she mention seeing anyone who was sick? Anyone on a plane, the airport?
No, she said she was jet-lagged.
The average person touches their face 3 to 5 times every waking minute. In between, we're touching doorknobs, water fountains, and each other.
Beth. Mom? No, go up to your room, honey.
So we have a virus with no treatment protocol and no vaccine at this time.
You had a seizure this morning, Beth.
She had a history of seizures,
No.
allergies.
As of last night, there were 32 cases.
Unfortunately, she did die.
Right. So can I go talk to her?
Mr. Amoff, your wife is dead.
What are you talking about? Okay. What happened to her? What happened to her?
Is there any way someone could weaponize the bird flu? Is that what we're looking at?
Someone doesn't have to weaponize the bird flu. The birds are doing that.
Watch this. It's transmission, so we just need to know which direction.
On day 1, there were 2 people, and then 4, and then 16. In 3 months, it's 1 billion. That's where we're headed.
They're calling out the National Guard. They're moving the president underground. People will panic.
Get away!
It will tip over.
The truth is being kept from the world.
Cook your samples, destroy everything.
Hello. I need you to get me the names of everyone who serviced this room. It's an emergency.
You can't panic now.
I know.
I'm gonna get you home. I got people too, Dr. Cheever. We all do.
Don't talk to anyone. Don't touch anyone. Stay away from other people.
Get back in your car. We're not sick.
It's figuring us out faster than we're figuring it out.
It's mutated.
And they predict coronavirus to a T. Event 201, which Bill Gates and other people did themselves, was a simulation of a pandemic. Bill Gates said that he predicted a big outbreak. He didn't. It's all lies, because here it is, exactly the same thing in 1918.
The virus could be a natural epidemic like Ebola, or it could be bioterrorism. And so there are things that would literally make things 1,000 times worse. In fact, let's look at a model of a virus spread through the air like the Spanish flu back in 1918. So here's what would happen. It would spread throughout the world very, very quickly. And you can see there's over 30 million people die from that epidemic. So this is a serious problem. we should be concerned. But in fact, we can build a really good response system. We have the benefits of all the science and technology that we talk about here. We've got cell phones to get information from the public and get information out to them. We have satellite maps where we can see where people are and where they're moving. We have advances in biology that should dramatically change the turnaround time to look at a pathogen and be able to make drugs and vaccines that fit for that pathogen. So we can have tools, but those tools need to be put into an overall global health system.
In 1918, Indianapolis required masks during the fight against the grey influenza. Again, the health officials are pictured with nobody on their stretchers, just like the empty beds during Corona. Public meetings are forbidden, so they closed the schools as well. Flu masks must be worn in all public places, which is happening in some other countries. In the UK, we have it in supermarkets and shops, but in other countries, they did this, and they did it in 1918. When and where flu masks must be worn. Masks must be worn by all citizens while in every store, office, factory, public building, theatre, church, streetcar, or any public gathering place. Masks need not to be worn at home, on the street, or while eating. Masks must be worn by all dentists, barbers, clerks. See, they were still open. All they said was wear a mask back then. The public schools have been closed indefinitely. The public library and all branches have been closed indefinitely. And they had the Dr. Fauci of the 1918 Spanish flu. More than a century ago, Dr. Thomas Tuttle prescribed face masks and social distancing to slow the influenza pandemic. He made a lot of enemies, but it worked. They're saying that it worked. So after this, when we all get the vaccine, they'll say that worked, and then we'll be on a jab, 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 jab. It works, it works, it works. Even though it doesn't. And to finish, the Bolshevik Revolution in 1917 has all the other hallmarks of what they're doing right now as well. 1917, sorry. The hunger is coming. World War, maybe. Revolution, all these people out thinking they're doing good. And 2 government takeovers. The government takeovers being the key word. The result was civil war, which is already brewing in America. And eventually, communism. Prior to the 1900s, the majorities of Russia's population were poor peasant farmers. Russia was a monarchy, ruled by Caesars, who had absolute power. That sounds like Britain to me. The monarchy had failed to address the persistent poverty and hunger, affecting the peasants and the emerging working class. Again, it sounds like my queen and my country. A classless society inspired revolutionary ideas among protesters. Russia entered World War I in 1914, which disrupted its fragile economy and strained infrastructure, which you could now argue is already happening with lockdown. As the war dragged on in Russia, suffered a series of major defeats, sapping morale on the home front. When February 1917 arrives, the citizens of the Russian capital have had enough. Protests spread across the city, with government soldiers eventually joining in. And they had no choice but to step down. People celebrate the end of the monarchy by destroying symbols of power. Statues are torn down and toppled. What does that sound like? A provisional government is formed, which this time will be the UN. And you get the idea. So this has all been trialed and done before.
Or it could be bioterrorism. 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 Or it could be bioterrorism.